So account management. Most of us have gotten a lot better over the years with limited or completely restricting admin rights, which is good because the users really don't need it in most cases, but some of us are still struggling with this. So if you have to give some faculty or staff admin rights, then make sure you have some solid procedures in place for both granting and managing that access. So maybe do something like have the user submit a valid justification for needing those rights, in which their supervisor has to sign off, and make sure that the user understands that they should, 1, be running as a user at all times and only elevating when they need to, and 2, that they need to comply with PSU policies, and especially avoid installing any software for which they don't have a valid license. Then they should also be required to periodically allow you to audit the system to make sure they are remaining compliant. And what about domain and local accounts? Are you adequately using domain groups and accounts as opposed to adding local accounts on all your devices? We're still seeing some units adding local admin accounts for their IT staff on all devices. Not a good practice, right? So for starters, what if one of those staff leaves the university? Now you have to run around to all the devices and disable or delete that user account, which is not very efficient. Rather, you should really be setting up domain groups where you add domain accounts for the IT staff, and then add those domain groups to all the devices as local admins. This way, when someone leaves, you only have to disable or delete the account in one place. Also, are you part of the central access domain? If not, perhaps it's time to take a look at that again. And finally, are we efficiently handling new hires and employee separation? We could really have a whole discussion on just that topic alone. Now, many of us can do a lot better in that space. We're really improving, I think, with new hires. I see many units are developing solid hiring practices in the way of efficiently getting someone all the access that they need and documenting that workflow. However, we need to do a much better job when it comes to employee separation. This is one area where we need to implement some solid procedures at the central level and provide awareness and training to all the units with properly handling employee separation. What about compliance? Is anyone here processing credit cards in your unit? If so, are you routinely auditing your setup to make sure you are staying PCI compliant? Do you routinely audit your controls if you have 8019 authorizations in place to store SSNs? Some units do have a need to do that. So are you making sure that, 1, you have those authorizations, and 2, that you are continuing to audit those controls to make sure you're staying in compliance? And how is your software licensing management? Are you in charge of all software purchases and media stewardship? Or are faculty and staff allowed to purchase software on their own? Either way, how do you make sure you're compliant? If faculty and staff are allowed to make purchases, perhaps they need to run that by you first, or at least provide you with a copy of the license. Are you utilizing central purchasing to make sure the software you are purchasing is complying with PSU policies? That's probably something most of us don't really think about. Most of the software that's all over Penn State's probably fine. But what about those one-off cases? You really should run those contracts or license agreements by central purchasing first, because you don't want to find out after you've spent a lot of money that the software conflicts with some policies, right? Web applications. Are you running any homegrown web apps in your unit? Unfortunately, we see this one far too often. Units will get a compromise from an old homegrown system with a web interface, and lo and behold, there's a lot of PII stored in a back-end database. And the kicker is that the server wasn't even needed in the first place, anymore. So if you have these, you really should take a solid look at those. And if they're not needed, turn them down. But if they are needed, well then, what data do they access and where is it stored? If there is data on the back end that's not needed anymore, then clear it out. And if it's restricted data, then you really need to clean up that system. Can you maybe offload that service to a central system? These are some things to think about. Also, if you do have these types of systems and you need to keep them running, are you routinely running web app scans through the SOS service? Because you should be doing that as well. And user awareness. This is one that a lot of you mentioned that's very important, and rightly so. Most of us can certainly do a better job with user awareness. And you should be regularly engaging the faculty and staff that you support, because really, more often than not, they are the weakest link, right? In particular, we are seeing a need for more awareness and repeated awareness with identity finder scans and remediation, as I mentioned earlier. Have you thought about VDI to keep data on site, and users can only access it remotely, even when they're on site? So if they're using thin client or zero client, they're really not keeping the data locally on that device. It's stored centrally and it's only accessed by other devices. So some units are actually well into operating in this manner where all the data is centrally managed and it stays central, so that's a good thing. And are you trying to get the word out about phishing scams? We're still seeing the package tracking emails getting a lot of people. Now, we have provided regional awareness sessions in the past, and we'd be happy to tailor something for your unit if you'd like. So just let us know if that's the case, and we'd be happy to try to set something up. And of course, there are many other areas we really need to take a good look at, some of which are things like physical security. So who has keys to your telecom rooms? I can tell you years ago at Hazleton, we had a situation with our main telecom room. So for starters, it seemed like half the campus had keys to that room. I guess back in the day, master keys were handed out like candy, and there wasn't really good key management back then. So anyway, one day we got a call from TNS that the network was down. All right. After some investigation, we found that the janitorial staff were buffing the hallway floors at night, and the closest outlet for that section was actually in the telecom room. So it just so happens that they ended up tripping the breaker, and the whole room went down. So there are many issues with that scenario, but not the least of which was there too many people had keys to that room. So after that, we decided this has got to stop. So we spent some money and re-cored the door, so only 2 keys existed. One for IT, which stayed locked in a cabinet, and one for police services, and the keys were only for emergency use. So we had a card swipe access control installed that those limited staff who absolutely needed access would gain entry in that way, which also gave us accountability. And we also added some video cameras inside the room for extra measure. We also need to take a look at our telephony setup in some cases. And analyzing logs, that's another good activity in many areas. And of course, there's always documenting your operations. I know we all have trouble finding the time to document, but it truly is very important. So that's a lot of stuff to gather data on and assess. Therefore, we are really interested to find out if you would like us to come on site for a few days and try to help you complete an assessment of your area and reprioritize your focus. It might even be beneficial in helping you gain support from leadership, since we would be involved. So we're here to help, and we encourage all units to use us as a resource to assist you in getting to that next level. We'd be happy to come on site for a few days, take a deep dive into your operations, and work with you to come up with a prioritized list of areas to work on. We'd also continue to follow up to see how you're managing and if you're running into any barriers that we can help you get through. So if you are interested, please email security@psu.edu and let us know, and we'd be happy to try to get something set up. And once again, I want to thank you for taking time out to engage with this session, and if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email those to security. Thank you.